Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Annenberg School. I'm Larry Gross. I'm the director of the School of Communication, one of the two schools in the Annenberg School, and I will shortly be handing the evening over to my colleague and counterpart, Geneva Overholser, the director of the School of Journalism. But I'd like to first welcome everybody in the name of the Annenberg School to an event that we're really very happy to be hosting here. This is the 5th year that the Annenberg School has hosted the World Press Photo Exhibit. We are one of only 2 venues in the United States, the other being the United Nations in New York, that hosts this extremely important event and exhibit in the world of photojournalism. I'll say a few words about that in a moment. I'd like to begin by acknowledging a few people, if they're here, I don't know. First, and probably not entirely welcome by her, I'd like to acknowledge Karen Davies, who, for anyone who doesn't know, Karen is the force of nature that has made this all happen. She is the one whose idea this was to begin with and whose energy and dedication has made it possible for the last few years. And certainly the Annenberg School is very grateful to Karen, because if it was just up to us, it probably wouldn't happen. The World Press Photo Exhibit, as I think many of you know, but some don't, is sort of the photojournalism Oscars. It's now in its 51st year, I believe, begun and continues to be headquartered in the Netherlands, which reminds me, the Consul General of the Netherlands, Jaap Veerman, may be here. I don't know. Is he here? We would like to say hello, but I guess he's not here. But he'll show up and look through the exhibit. This exhibit, which is, as I said, now in its 51st year, has become established as the format and the context in which the profession of photojournalism recognizes and honors its most successful and impressive practitioners, much as the Oscars, more familiar, does in the area of film and other such award programs occur. There were more than 5,000 photographers who submitted their work. More than 80,000 images were submitted, reviewed by a jury of photojournalists from around the world, and the winners are on exhibit upstairs. As a school of communication, a school for communication, I should say, which incorporates both a school of communication and a school of journalism, the opportunity to host this exhibit is particularly welcome for us. For a school of journalism, and I'll leave this to my colleague, Professor Overholser, to speak for herself and her school, it seems to me for a school that teaches journalism, that trains people in the profession, including photojournalism and visual journalism, the opportunity to see the best work produced around the world is terrific, is sort of unmatched. It is particularly valuable to have it come to the school where our students, our faculty, and members of the community. This is an exhibit that draws quite large crowds. People come from high schools, from other schools, from the community around Los Angeles. This is a very popular and well-attended exhibit during the weeks when we have hosted it in January for the last few years, and I'm sure will continue to be that. For a school of communication, speaking from my own perspective as a scholar and teacher in the field of communication with a particular interest in visual communication, there is something also especially valuable about this sort of exhibit because, as I often put it in talking to students and others, the thing about images is you can't describe them or paraphrase them. You have to see them. If you're interested in teaching about the visual image and the power of the visual image, the way in which visual images convey our understanding of the world and remain with us as the sort of iconic representation of the events we've lived through, you have to show the image. You can't simply say, there was a dramatic photograph of this. There was a photograph that everybody remembers. You have to show the photograph. You have to include it. You can't simply describe it or paraphrase it or quote it. A photograph has to be seen. And it is even better if you can see it in large format, in good quality. Nowadays, with the internet, it has become all too easy. In fact, that's a good thing, but it is not always entirely a good thing. You can, use Google Images to find lots of images that you might have heard about, and that's wonderful. You can now send students or others and say, well, go Google it, and you'll know what we're talking about. But a small image on your laptop is not the same thing either. It's a different kind of paraphrase. And there's a term introduced in the 1960s that I think is still valid, even though it may be a little bit obscure for some of the younger people in the audience. A psychologist named Roger Brown referred to what he called flashbulb memories. And I don't know if you know what flashbulbs were, but flashbulb memories are those visual images that become imprinted on our mind and become the inescapable way in which certain events in our lives, certain historical events, become imprinted and become part of how we think about history, part about how we think about current events. And they become part of our common cultural currency, for better or for worse. Some of those flashbulb memories, and I've often found that I'm talking to students or talking to audiences, people know exactly what you mean when you talk about certain images. And I will pluck one example from among our common storehouse of flashbulb memories, partially because it allows me to recognize and welcome Nick Ut, who is here in the audience and is one of the photographers who has contributed some of these images. And if I ask classes, students, even today, to visualize the Vietnam War, and Nick is, I'm sure, all too familiar with what follows, the image of children fleeing from a napalm attack is right at the top of their mental gallery of that war. That is an image that has been imprinted indelibly on our common cultural imagery of history. And those are the kinds of contributions that photojournalists make about the most serious events and sometimes about the less serious events, the aspects of our lives. They become our common photo album, not the one that we have in our living rooms that we share with our relatives, but the ones we all have as members of a society. And it is part of the legacy of photojournalism to fill out our common imagination and our common memory, and that becomes a very important part of how we understand history, both as it's happening and later on as we think back on it. And for that reason, exhibits like this are an important part of the educational mission of the Annenberg School, and we are therefore very grateful for the opportunity to share this with our students, with our colleagues, and with members of the community. And it is particularly a pleasure at the opening of this exhibit to have with us the photographers whose work is represented upstairs in the exhibit, and to have them talk about some of their work and answer your questions. And at this point, I am delighted to turn the proceedings over to Geneva Overholser, the director of the School of Journalism.
Thank you so much, Larry. You've said it all. It is an extraordinary honor for us to be able to have you here with us to recognize this remarkable work. As a longtime journalist myself, a print journalist, I have been ever admiring of the power that photojournalists are able to bring to the messages of information and emotion that we share with our readers and viewers. And I'm going to get right to introducing the people you most want to hear. Our first speaker is Tim Hetherington, who is the World Press Photo of the Year winner. Tim is an Englishman, educated at Oxford, and I love this. You have his bio, and you'll be reading it, but I love noting that his first job was with a magazine sold by the homeless. If in the Renaissance there had been videographers, he would absolutely have been our Renaissance man. I cannot imagine a resume that brings together such a diversity of talents: a still photographer, a videographer, a documentary maker, and a book author. Tim, please come share with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be amongst such a welcoming crowd. Often, and over the last year, I've had the experience to travel with the exhibit and to talk widely about the state of photojournalism, of documentary photography, and I often find myself under attack from different forums as increasingly the media landscape changes, and we find ourselves under the microscope of asking, what do our images mean? Who are we talking to? Why are we making them? Especially in the context that I work, where often I'm photographing extreme acts of human behavior. I want to show two things today. I'll show the images that I sent into the World Press Photo, the 12 images. I didn't actually enter this as a single image. Whilst I appreciate the power of single images and the contemplation and their role in history, as a working image maker, I'm more interested in groups of images, and that's why it's easy for me to move into the moving image and into documentary form, film form, because I'm often thinking about narrative. So I'm going to show the 12 pictures to give you a context of what I was doing. I was on assignment for Vanity Fair at the time. I'll just run this here. And, oops, sorry. The computer's getting the better of me. Where has that gone? Hang on. As always, here we go. Sorry, let's get this back. There we go. Okay. So I was working with a platoon of soldiers in the Korangal Valley, a 6-mile-long valley on the border there with Pakistan. Second platoon of Battle Company, the 173rd Airborne. And the valley became known as a very active war zone. In fact, it accounted for 18% of all combat in Afghanistan, both coalition and American forces, last year. 70% of American bombs were being dropped in this valley. It was where a SEAL team was trapped and killed in 2005. So those are the images that I submitted, and by chance, by fortune, whatever it may be, the story won a second prize general news story, and that was given the overall prize. But just talking more widely about media. As I said, it's very nice to be in a welcoming atmosphere, and I just want to pick up on what Larry said about photos have to be seen, and I think it's very important that as an image maker. The interesting thing about it is, as photographers, that not only that we have to be there as image makers. Witnessing is very much part of it, and then whilst Larry was talking, he made me think of a guy called Alfredo Jar, the conceptual artist that started to probe the ideas of documentary form. And Jar actually had an exhibit once where you didn't see any pictures, you just saw the captions. And Jar was discussing how, almost probing the utility of documentary images and what they bring to us. And I think a lot about this in my work. Because I have to justify being in these extremities of the human condition, and And so I also work across the media as part of that way to justify my presence. I'm looking for a certain utility. I'm not just interested in making beautiful pictures. I really need to know that people are going to see the pictures. And so that's why I also work across from the still to the moving image. And I wanted to show you a piece that I'm working on recently, because whilst we were in Afghanistan, I was photographing and filming. And this is a more conceptual piece that I worked on that I thought you might be interested to see. Yeah.
K-pop. Hey,
levels you're on up here in the next 3 hours. Open that large get in there and isolate that village over there one night. Have the NA go in there to clear it during the day. They did about 230 miles. Break.
I like homemade food. Hey, he wants us to go up over this hill and bum rush. There's fucking dudes right there. If we do that, we're gonna have to fucking lay down. We're gonna have to lay down fire first. Yeah, but we don't. Yes, but we can't get a hold of them. We don't know where they're at. That's why we can't. Yeah, who's down? We got Sergeant Rogel and them up.
What do you want me at? Put me somewhere. What do you want me at?
What? What's going on? Just chill out, dude. Wait, shut the fuck out. Chill out. Who's over there? Oh my god. Get him. Shut up, dude. No, I'm not, man. Shut up. Move, man. It's alright, dude. It's alright. Just chill out there. Roger, get the Slosky. This fucking. I want you getting him back to fucking help you. Alright, you know where that's at? Hey, you guys need over there. Yeah, we have guys all through here.
You need to push back because we got not enough. I know, man. I know. Come on. Pull it together, man. Come on, bro. It's my fault, man. Get the fuck over here. It's not your fault.
Yeah, so that's, I just want to show I work on conceptual stuff like that, and then from the magazine, photography, Fantasy Fair, and then we're making TV and feature-length documentaries, so I just want to kind of show you that breadth of work. Is there any questions?
Well, a couple of questions for Tim, and welcome. Anyone? I think we have microphones to come your way. Any questions or comments?
Where was that series of photographs made, or footage that you took?
It was all made in the Korongal Valley, and what I did was I worked with the writer Sebastian Junger, and we decided that we wanted to look at a platoon of soldiers, U.S. soldiers, fighting in Afghanistan. We started it in 2007, and what was interesting is that when we looked at it, we realized that nobody had actually covered a group of soldiers for an entire deployment. And there's lots of discussion in the media about embedding, and what I think was interesting was that we found the Achilles heel, as it were, of the embed system, which was the generals or the Pentagon or the press office don't expect journalists to go and follow a deployment for a year. I mean, I have friends of mine, a friend of mine, Mike Camber, who also has images upstairs, who works for the New York Times, and he covered Iraq for the last 4 years. And Mike said to me, he said, I spent in total, in terms of time in the Korongal Valley, I spent 4 months there, living with those guys in a bunker, this place, Restrepo. There was no running water or electricity to begin with. We were sleeping on these kind of small cots. And we just lived very closely to the soldiers. And Mike said to me, he said, I go out in Iraq on an embed, and I will see the soldiers for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then that's it. I'll never ever see them again. And I think that by spending that amount of time with these soldiers, that we kind of got inside their emotional life in a way that I don't think is often seen. And so I think that that's what gave our embed a kind of value and brought something new to an audience that I don't think was often seen, Yeah.
Another question. We're doing a video, and it would be helpful if we could get the questions on. So right here, yeah.
In that last piece, what was the crisis and how was it resolved?
The crisis was the American lines had been overrun by Taliban, and a couple of guys had been shot, and one guy, their friend Sergeant Ruger, was shot dead. And so it's about that. I mean, obviously, this is not a piece of journalism, but in the TV piece or in the film we're doing, obviously that's fleshed out. And we aired the stuff on ABC, on Nightline, and that was, you could obviously see that. But I wanted this to be a much more subjective interior piece.
Who else? Can we get a mic back here to the middle to this? I'd love to get some students in. So here's the young man with the cap.
Do you go through any training before you go out there?
No, I can't. I mean, I got into this business. I'm not like a kind of fireman wall photographer that goes around the world. I got into the business very gradually and through working in West Africa. I went to live in West Africa, and by chance what happened in the late 90s and early 2000s was there's a lot of civil wars going on. So I eventually got into it that way, and you kind of learn over time.
We have a young woman questioner here in the front.
I was wondering if you asked the soldiers to take their picture before you took it.
Yeah.
Especially given that some of those moments were very intimate. How did they respond to having you there?
That's a really interesting question. When I first went out, and I started going out in September, the soldiers were very at arm's length with us. Obviously, the press don't have a good rapport with the military, and so it took a lot of time to build up their trust. And obviously, by the end, I wasn't asking. I mean, there was no filter. there was no filter at all, really, by the end. I mean, we went back to finish the film into Italy. They're based in Italy, so we returned there in November to film the retrospective interviews for the feature-length doc we're doing. And it was incredible that I thought when we were in Afghanistan that their filters had come off, but then the stories they told us when we got back to Italy were absolutely astounding. So that process of them opening up and giving me access went over the year. So by the end, I didn't need to ask them permission. And they opened up their interior lives quite incredibly. But there were difficult moments, like the moment when Rugal died. I remember coming up there and filming, and one of the guys, Rayon, who there's a still image with the blood on his back, it was his really good friend of his, and I was filming, and Rayon said to me, shut the camera off. After a while, he realized filming, he said, shut the camera off. And I did, and then I carried on. And then he came up to me later, and he said, I'm really sorry that I asked you to shut the camera off. You know, I understand why you're here, and we really appreciate you're here. We know what you're doing, we get it. And that was fine. And then when he saw the piece on the TV, he never spoke to me again. And I don't know, I can't work out, in my heart, I'm not sure if it's because he hated me that he didn't speak to me again. I just think that he also just couldn't deal with the whole mediated experience of something being so public and so powerful, a very intimate, powerful scene becoming so public. It was something he struggled to make sense of himself, I think.
Tim is so concise. Let's have one more up here in the pink jacket.
I was curious, what was your percentage, say you're shooting the film that you show, as well as just shots, just images? What sort of percentage was that? Like,
we shot 140 hours, 150 hours of tape, HDV out there, and I shot, I don't know. I mean, I don't really keep account of those things. It's much more instinctual, and yeah. I mean, what's interesting is that just about with regards to film and TV, is that people, I work across the media because it's like if 2 million people are seeing Vanity Fair and 22 million are seeing ABC News and Nightline and ABC, and then you've got different audiences in different types of environments. And I find that very interesting to work across those media. And what's interesting is that I often find that where people trying to put me in a box are sort of saying, well, you're a photographer. And I think it's much more interesting, and where the media is going is that all those boundaries are disintegrating, and that we are moving across the boundaries. And that then, I was talking to Erika about this before, what we get known for is like, what do I do? Well, I've been working about stories about long-term projects about men concerned with men in cycles of violence and how they're used as a kind of power weapon by authorities in West Africa and now in Afghanistan, and that's what I'm interested in. And it's funny how, the new media landscape allows you to move across these boundaries, and I think that's really quite liberating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe we can
Thanks a
get
lot.
back to more at the end. Thank you very much. Such powerful work. I'm struck by Larry's having noted that in order to see an image, of course, we really need to be seeing it. It can't be described. And by your having said that the noteworthy thing about a photographer, a photojournalist in particular, is that he or she has to be there. But what I think is also really striking in looking at that remarkable exhibit upstairs is that it requires us to be there. In an era when journalism is too often about telling us what to think, we are confronted with the power of these messages, and we bring our thinking to them. And our next photographer, I think, really brings that point home. Erika Larsen has photographed children hunting. And the Daily Trojan, our newspaper, reporter was asking me, what do I think is unique about photography as journalism? And I said, well, you bring your own messages to a photograph and interact with it. And I bet everybody in this room thought different things as they looked at this poignant photo of a little boy with a hunting rifle. And I think Erika's sensitivity in making this photograph, you're a contributing photographer for Field and Stream, and and photograph children hunting and experiencing a relationship with the outdoors, you know, an alternative to video games, which obviously is one powerful message. Others would bring very different judgments to it. So come tell us what went through your mind, Erika.
Oh, Tim, your computer. Well, I'm going to give a little background first. I started photographing hunting in 2003, and I really chose hunting as a way to look at life and death. And I realized after several years that I was also speaking about a culture and a certain way of life. And that's also around the same time that I got hired by Field and Stream. And in 2005, they ran a 12-page portfolio of my personal work on hunting throughout North America. And from that, and the response we got from readers, they wanted to commission another body of work. And myself and the editor-in-chief came up with Children in Hunting. And it was sort of a natural progression to see who the next generation of hunters were. And I wanted to photograph children that, over anything else, any other activity, wanted to hunt. Young blood, who are these children, the next keepers of the earth and her story? Instinct-driven, they will lead us on a journey. Experience with them their connection to their primal call, the one which will ensure our survival over the trials that nature can pose. Learn with them the precious lessons granted through hunting. Walk with them as they take leadership as the catalyst for rebirth. This first image is Enrique. He was the first child I hunted with. He was 6.5, but had been hunting with his father since he was 2. This is where we were elk hunting in New Mexico, and this landscape for me represents the cycles of life and death, which I think inevitably the children had to look at as well. It's also prime feeding ground for elk. This is called Mary's Field, and this was deer hunting in South Georgia. This is hog hunting, also in South Georgia. And this is from that same trip. Something I learned is that the children weren't only hunting, but they were learning wildlife management. If there was an overpopulation of hogs, this was an island we were hunting on, the children, the adults would be the first ones to go out and castrate and take control of the population. But also this island, the water had been dammed in the front sort of unnaturally, and if it did flood, the children and the adults would be out there first ones, bringing every hog to higher ground. So they learn to live in the nature and to try to keep the natural balance as well as with the human activity that's sort of ever-changing, especially in the United States. And here I learned from the parents that it's really 100% effort to take their kids out into the nature. It's much easier to send them off to a soccer game or to put them in front of a video game, but to get up at 5 in the morning and take them out hunting on the weekends or when they get off of work was a dedication the parents had to do. Hunting is a tradition that's passed from one generation to another. It was a bonding experience within the families that I believe existed because of the absence of otherworldly things. These are brothers that hunt. They're also on the basketball team. This is squirrel hunting in southern Georgia. And this picture, this is titled Ruthie's First Kill. Ruthie's 13, and I didn't call it that. It wasn't her first kill, but it was her first kill with a knife. And I learned that killing with a gun or killing with a bow and arrow and killing with a knife are all three totally different things. In this specific situation, the hog was bayed up by the dogs in pretty dense thicket, and we went in, and Ruthie was ready to shoot it. And once we got there, she made the quick decision that, it was too dense to shoot. So her uncle at the same time, because when you're hunting hog, it's a really dangerous animal, and they move really fast, and even though the dogs have it at bay, it doesn't, stop them from coming after you. So instantly, sort of in the same moment, her uncle went in and grabbed the legs of the hog, and she took out her knife, dropped her gun, took out her knife, and went into the heart and stabbed it. And in my experience of hunting, I don't even think many grown men would have been able to do that. It's really interesting for me. I call this after, and I talked to her after, and I wanted to know what it was like and why she did that. And she said it was purely instinct. She didn't think about it. She said, she knew she didn't have a shot just from her experience of hunting. She said, but to stab it like that was pure instinct. And she was shooken up, and she actually said, I can't believe I did that. But I think in that instance, she actually did what she needed to do, because any longer would have come towards us. And this is Marky, and this is a different side of the hunt. She's never killed an animal, and she goes out with her father, and the thing that he said to me was the most important is the questions that it posed. She'd pick up a shed, which is an antler or something that had been left by an animal, in this picture, a feather, and asked what the animal was doing, where it had slept the night before, why was it here, where was it going. And this is the father with Marky and Jack, and he said that was for him the most important thing. It got them to ask questions about nature, to question the environment around them, why the animals are here, what human roles with the animals are. And he said, but the questions that his daughter posed and the son are totally different. The son wanted to know when he could do it all, what's next on the list, was he old enough to shoot a deer, when could he go to Canada. And he said he wanted these questions never to cease. And this is Jack. This is called Totem. This was pheasant hunting in Illinois. This is goose hunting in upstate New York. And I'm going to read you a quote from Benjamin. Benjamin Reed, 10 years old. It was very cold and I couldn't feel my toes, but I was just hoping for that moment that birds were going to fly over. This is a program that's outreach to get children, and specifically girls, more into hunting. And another quote, this is Mary Dennis, 10 years old. I asked her what she thought about when she was hunting. Sometimes I try to go to sleep, but sometimes I read my books and look around at all the trees and get songs stuck in my head. This is turkey hunting in Georgia. And this is Will Friedberger, 14, and I asked him about the kill and what it was for him. He said, my least favorite thing is that you're taking the life away from the animal you shot, but if you kill it cleanly and eat it, it makes it a lot better. And these are the last pictures I'm going to show. This is called Awaken. This is a story about Alyssa. I work with an organization called Hunt of a Lifetime, which grants children whose last wish is a hunt, if they're terminally ill. Alyssa has osteosarcoma. She had her leg amputated 6 months before our hunt, and she finished her chemo treatment a week before the hunt, and she was 15. The story is really close to my heart, and I had one question for her, which was, why would a girl who had never hunted before in her life and faced with the imminent recognition of death want to hunt? There was this girl, popular, young, ran track, played basketball, giggled out of all proportion with her friends, was given the terrible blessing of cancer. Her friends came to visit at first, then fell back into their own lives. She lost a leg, her hair, and a friend at the hospital with the same diagnosis. A social worker asked if she was afraid of dying. She fell back onto the only things she believed: God, her family, herself. All she could do was fight as hard as she could each day that she woke alive. For I know the plans I have for you, he says in the book of Jeremiah. She spent a long time in the place where life and death made their mediated settlements. On the hunt, she stalked the last 50 yards on a mule deer on her 2 hands and 1 knee, and finally reached the one rock big enough to hide behind with a rifle. She waited for the deer to stand. When it was over, it was everyone else who was surprised. She knew it had been decided long ago. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Erika. Photography bringing us into a different world. Let's have questions for Eric. Right down here in front. A microphone's heading your way.
Well, it's on. You mentioned that you asked the girl with cancer why was it that she wanted to do this, because she's been faced with death herself. What was her answer? Or did I not hear it?
Well, that was sort of it, that for her, it wasn't even too thought about. It was something that for her had sort of been decided. And she kind of quoted the book of Jeremiah, and she said that that's pretty much what she said. She quoted that and said this had been decided long before. In my own personal reason, I think that, and that's actually what the picture shows for me so much, is that the deer's the one's dead with his eyes open and her eyes are closed and she's still alive. I think it sounds strange, maybe it's some sort of connection. I think she believed it was a way for her to understand death, to get closer to it. So.
Over here in the polka dots.
Has your work given you any insight into these people's, how, I shouldn't say these people, but how religion and the hunting life intersect?
I think it's, well, hunting traditionally, I mean, I think if you look, you mean specifically these children? These children are just... Or hunting in general? I mean...
There's a lot, it seems like there's a lot of intersection when you pick yourself in the boys with the cross on his chest, and there's a lot of references to life.
I think, one, it's the way, I think I tend to see hunting as a spiritual thing, so that sort of comes out in the photographs, or that's what it has shown to me that it is. I think a lot of the places that are hunting exists in the U.S. tend to be in southern areas where a lot of them are more fundamental Christians. It's definitely not the case. I mean, I don't think half of these people probably, aren't church-based at all. But I think hunting, I think you're dealing with such a fundamental thing like life and death. I think spirituality is inevitable to question or to think about. So.
There was another question here, yeah.
I guess I wanted to ask, with the portraits in this series, how much direction was involved?
My work is like, I don't know the answer to that. I shoot with a large format camera, so it's very deliberate what I'm doing. I don't tell people what to do. I know that. I don't. In fact, I don't talk at all when I photograph, really. I'm very silent. But at the same time, I think my presence there elicits a certain reaction out of somebody. Even having that kind of camera elicits something out of them. So in that sense, I am coming to them with a certain type of direction when you place a tripod in a big camera. But I think the pose that they take, or that's up to them. I mean, I didn't say close your eyes. I didn't say sit like that. That was something she did. But then again, maybe there's some conversation, like in this picture, so, okay, let's get a picture with you and the deer. And that's what she did. But it's interesting, if you see like her father's pictures or the writer who was with me, they're very different pictures. So I think, photography is a dance between two people, in my opinion, anyway. So it's part of me, part of them. But a lot of it's unspoken direction, most likely.
Let's see. You know what? I'm going to move over here to the person in green. I don't want to get too stuck in one quadrant.
Hi, just a couple of questions. First of all, I want to know, have you ever hunted?
I did once, yep, when I was 18.
And is that what inspired you to do the story?
No, like I said, for me, it was the most safe way to look at life and death, and I just chose hunting. Maybe because I was familiar with it, I knew the topic, so I said, let me explore it through this. But it didn't have anything to do. I grew up around hunting. I grew up on the eastern shore of Maryland, so it was there. But no, I think the images have become about hunting culture. It definitely wasn't the catalyst for why I did it.
And then as far as lugging around the large format camera, it would seem kind of almost an odd choice for something where I'm assuming people move around a lot and there's a lot of kind of action going on to a certain extent. What made you choose that format, and how was that to just work in that format and that surrounding and that environment?
I have to say that I've been shooting large format for probably 10 years, so I never really gave thought to using anything else. So that might not help too much. I haven't probably picked up another camera. I just used one camera and one lens for about 10 years. So that wasn't really in my mind specific. I didn't choose the camera for this project. I choose it in general for the way that I photograph. But in terms of obviously there's not a lot of action. But I don't think I'm looking for the action. I'm not interested in the action of it. I'm interested in the reflectiveness of it and other things. So I guess it wasn't necessary to use a faster camera. I would say that it's a lot of hiking and a lot of outdoors, and I'm noticing now in the project I'm working on, it's hard. It's like you're going 8 miles up a mountain and with a 4x5 on your back with 50 plates, and no assistant. I think as I'm getting older, I might change my ideas a little bit. So,
Erika, thank you for your extraordinarily thought-provoking presentation. Very interesting. Our next photographer is a remarkably talented young man, Justin Maxon. I love the emphasis that you have placed on your interest in documentary projects that examine human struggle and perseverance. You've been recognized with the Lucy Award, International Photo Award, Deeper Perspective Photographer of the Year, and you'll be an intern at the New York Times this summer. Justin is in his final year, I believe, at San Francisco State. And back to that Daily Trojan interview, I was noting that photography can bring us things that aren't necessarily in the news. We know homelessness, we know Vietnam, but this affecting photo that was recognized of the little boy and his mother, homeless people bathing in Vietnam, was quite remarkable. Please come up and share it with us.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Maxon, and I'm 25 years old, and like she had mentioned, I'm in my last year of study at San Francisco State, though currently taking some time off to pursue some personal projects. I'm a photographer that's dedicated to pursuing long-term stories that often examine the complex link between human struggle and perseverance. Being most passionate about the process of building relationships with people, I immerse myself in the lives of those in my stories. From From this place of deep compassion, I feel as though I can get the most intimate look into their lives. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 separate projects, 2 of which are still ongoing. The first project is a glimpse into the relationship of a homeless woman named Mui and Fa, and this is one of the pictures from that story. And this is just a kind of a story summary. Mui, a Buddhist, has been living homeless for the last 5 years on the streets of Hanoi, Vietnam, with her 5-year-old son, Fa. In Vietnam, a woman's livelihood is often dependent on her husband. And unfortunately, Mui has lost 2 husbands in the past. Fa's father died of a heroin overdose around the time he was born, and Mui's second husband was recently put in an institution for the insane. Without a man to provide for them, they are forced to fend for themselves. They sleep on straw mats on the ground and scavenge through garbage for their food. Even though they face many daily challenges, they are able to find happiness in their simple affection for each other. And this is a selection of images from that story. Often, the view society holds of poverty and homelessness is one of desperation and sorrow. But with Mui and Fa, their relationship clearly redefines this model and shows that people with few possessions can find joy in the simplest aspects of their lives. In my time with them, I was touched by their connection and the intimacy of care that held their lives together. I left them feeling a greater appreciation for the relationships in my own life, and I hoped that by sharing their story, that others would be impacted in the same way. The second project I'm going to share is one that I started at the beginning of last year in the Tenderloin District in San Francisco. I was only able to work on it for a short time, but plan to develop it into a larger body of work. I'm going to show a small collection of images from my time there, along with a multimedia on a couple living in a residential hotel. My goal is to complete a series of short multimedia that explore the range of adversity people endure living in this region. And again, there's going to be a story summary with my voice. Life is havoc for those caught in the cycle of drug abuse and poverty in San Francisco's Tenderloin District, or better known as the TL. This neighborhood is the poorest in the city, with an estimated 70% of its residents living below the poverty line. People here either live on the street or at best in cramped 8x10 single-room occupancy hotel rooms, or SROs. Drugs, prostitution, and mental illness are rampant, and disease, death, and arrest are constant.
I was broken, surely you just did. I still remember the feeling when hearts were spoken and emotions invested. As the sunset deep wrapped Catalina, you said I can't get away from myself, but you were always there for me. Oh, I wish I had been there for you. surely you're gone, surely you just, I love you.
I'm interested in pursuing multimedia for this project because I feel single images at times can often decontextualize people's lives. And in situations where people are living in a decaying lifestyle, like such as this, single images are not enough to reveal the humanity of their character, and hearing them tell their own story is surely needed. Just give me a sec, I'm just going to hook up. This project is, again, on a couple. I focused on it for a couple of months. I met them in the process of being in this community. And anyways, just let it tell its story.
You all right, Carol?
Yeah, my eyes are burning.
You want to lay down a little bit? Or?
No, I'm not tired. I'm awake. And then I sit here, my back is sweating, my throat is cold. But I'm always like that. My name's Carol Landers. I'm 55. I'll be 56 this year in September. About 4 or 5 months ago, I started losing weight. At that time, I was losing about 5 pounds every 2 weeks. And found out I had cancer, and it had spread to both lungs from the esophagus. It had spread severely enough where it was past the point they could do anything. And that was sort of humorous, the way they try to tell you you're dying but don't want to come out and say the word. I hope that I do see the brighter side of life again before I'm taken from this one. I'm living in the exact situation that I said when I was probably 15 I would never want to be caught dead visiting. I didn't even really believe existed other than in movies. And here I may well die in a place like this.
Who is it?
Who is at the door?
Hey man, listen dude, I don't want to kick your door in, but it's about money though, homie.
Mike, I just got up.
I don't care if you just got up. That was my last $5.
Mike, can I talk to you?
But when you fuck with somebody about your money, you live with another person, it brings it on them also. I'm gonna treat you like this until you get my money. And you're gonna see how real I am over $5.
So we don't have
right?
Yeah, we don't have to do that. We take care of it today.
Smoking crack is my escape, not to face what's happening with Carol. But I know it's going to come. I'm going to be lost for a while. I'll never forget Carol. I'll be thinking about her every day. I am kind of ashamed that in the 13 years we were together, I never improved myself more. Like instead of sitting around doing drugs, that I didn't get a job 9 to 5 or not living in a little room like this, make sure we had a big apartment and, you know, better things in life. Right now it's a wake-up call, even though she hasn't died yet. It's going to make me feel a little bit stronger about my own situation. After Carol dies, I have to structure my life, or if I don't, I'm going to end up either going to prison, or if I don't get my warrants squashed and get on SSI, I'll be homeless.
Without help, I don't believe I'd be alive right now, because I did sort of give up a couple of times until I saw there was someone back behind me and pushing me and not letting me do that. The hardest part about knowing you're going to die is leaving people behind. It's not the dying yourself. And we had always planned on growing old together and stuff, and nothing was going to split us up. And I just wanted to make it. I wanted to survive. I'm going to be there for him after I leave this earth, to oversee what I can. This is what I believe.
The hardest part of working on that project for me was not being able to really help Harold and Carol. I got very close to them in my time working on the project, and watching them live in the life that they did, and watching them deteriorate the way they did, it was very hard on me, and because they were caring people and they deserved a better life than what was given to them. The next project I'm going to share is one that I recently started this last summer in a town called Chester, just outside of Philadelphia. Again, I have another story summary. Chester was once a predominantly white community with a thriving economy built around shipping manufacturing. Now, decades following that industry's collapse, and after years of white flight, the population is over 75% African American. The surrounding all-white county and conservative politicians responded to the change in population by creating an economic slum out of Chester. The town of around 37,000 faces many crises, including one of the worst public school systems in the state, extreme levels of pollution, a poverty rate and an unemployment rate almost 3 times the national average, and a staggering murder rate 7 times the national average. In the face of these challenges, there was a revitalization movement led by the religious community, which is over 200 churches strong. Essentially, faith is a major stabilizing force in Chester and keeps the community from unraveling completely. My goal with this project is to explore both sides of Chester, from the many crises to the spirit and courageousness that is strong in the face of these issues. By covering more positive aspects of Chester, I strive to avoid perpetuating the stereotypes that are often associated with inner cities throughout the U.S. And in doing so, hope that people who view my story will connect on a deeper level with the subjects. We are in a place right now in journalism that is obviously full of uncertainties, where budget cuts and corporate interests have undoubtedly wreaked havoc on the power of the media to create positive change. And since documentary photography is under siege from so many different places, it is imperative And photographers continue to pursue and find creative outlets for getting their long-term projects seen, because these stories are vital in bringing awareness to issues that are often neglected. I've dedicated my life to storytelling and hope that I will be able to continue in that pursuit, no matter the condition of the industry around me. Thank you, and I will take any questions.
Right up here in front.
Hey, all right, in that first story, with that, the San Francisco one, the girl with her leg, is all like open.
Oh yeah, it's a man actually.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. No worries.
What happened?
Well, he got an infection in his leg from shooting heroin, and because people that live in that area live in these tiny little rooms, and they're often unsanitary. And so people don't really clean themselves, and so I guess he maybe shot up some bad drugs and didn't see any help, and he got a what's called a flesh-eating bacteria, and so he had to I guess he just had surgery, and he was washing it actually in that picture.
I think you have to go back a little bit.
Quick question: is there a reason you chose to do all your photos in black and white?
It's a good question. I just think that for me, I'm a photographer that looks primarily at emotion, and I think that in black and white images, emotion is more compelling. I think it just comes across in a more clear way. Whereas color, it's powerful, and I just think that sometimes it can distract from that emotion. So that's just my opinion.
Back and toward the back.
I know a lot of times low-income people, and especially street denizens, are reluctant to be photographed. They feel like they're being exploited. And I also know the Tenderloin, there are a lot of people on drugs who are probably extremely difficult to sort of sort out what's going on with their lives. And I was just wondering sort of how you chose your subjects and how you gained their trust.
It's a good question. For me, like I mentioned, I connect with people, and like for example in the Tenderloin, I go out, I'm hanging out every single day in the community, and I'm constantly talking to people, and most people don't respond to me, they don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, or they're not interested in what I have to say. But sometimes out of the 100 people I talk to in a week, maybe 1 or 2 people are interested in talking to me, and then from there, I'll meet those people, and then I'll just kind of find out where they live or where they stay, and I'll just keep going back over and over and over again, and just showing interest in their life and showing that I care pretty much in who they are. And so over that period of time, they build a trust. They build a trust up of me, and they feel comfortable with my presence there. So that's just kind of how I do it.
One more question back in the back on the left.
Hi, some of your subjects are similar to like Nan Goldin's and Robert Mapplethorpe's stuff. How do you think yours differentiates from their work?
That's a good question. I honestly, I really respect and admire Nan Goldin's work. I can't really think of anything like how mine separates from their work. I think that they're coming from more of a fine art type background, where I'm more interested in, in the human experience, and so that's all I can really say. So I'm sorry I can't answer that in fuller question.
Thank you very much, Justin. I'm told that over the years we've had many requests for a nature photographer in behind the lens, and boy do we have one this evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome David Liittschwager, who's done everything from work for Richard Avedon to work with National Geographic. And I have to tell you, you all have seen his photographs upstairs. They're exquisite. They're gem-like. But I did tell him before we assembled here tonight that I just moved out here from D.C. and we're living on the water in Santa Monica, and I love going in the ocean. But he has changed my experience. So please join us up here.
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. And I made a couple of notes while others were speaking. This exhibit that's out there, I think it's particularly interesting because it's a social space where you can have a conversation about it, which makes it quite different from sitting alone in the new mode of looking at things on the web. So I think that conversation is particularly with the work that Tim does, or the different points of view that Erika's work makes us think about. And in Justin's work that is, when you go out on the street and you have some place to go and you see someone less fortunate than you, and you speed on past without trying to look the other way or something. So those conversations, I think, are critical. And so with the pictures that I do, I'm gonna show you something really hideous to start with, and then I hope I can show you something really beautiful, like what we get to keep if we don't keep messing up. So let's make sure that this thing is actually, it's gonna work. This is an incredible advertisement for Apple, if you haven't noticed. It's not premeditated. But, okay, so let's just... This is a Laysan albatross chick that did not fledge. It seemed perfectly healthy until the day before this picture was taken, when it succumbed to dehydration. So it died in the shade underneath a tree on Kiri Atoll, which is the most northerly island in the northwestern Hawaiian island chain. It is the most remote place I have ever been. And since I have the honor and privilege to be able to go to some rather outrageous places, this is the hardest place to get to. It sits 1,200 miles northwest of Honolulu. The only way to get there is on a boat that takes 8 days. And it takes such an incredible amount of fuel that it can't be done by private individuals. You have to hitch a ride on a NOAA research vessel. So, shedbird. This is a bird that I'd known for about a month because its nest was right outside this little shed, which was left over from the Coast Guard when there was a Loran station there. Well, Loran was a navigational device which is totally obsolete now because of GPS. But that's where this parent's nest had been for generations. And so I knew this bird, and then it died. And then the refuge manager, Cynthia, wants to know why all the birds die. So this is its stomach, proventriculus. It's the second stage in a bird's digestive tract. There's the crop, and then the proventriculus, and then the rest of its stomach. So this proventriculus is supposed to be about this big at this point in its life, where it throws up a bolus, which is a little thing, a little compact package of squid beaks and other naturally undigestible material. This is what was in its proventriculus. This is 13.5 ounces of plastic. So imagine something from a mass point of view, just 3 baseballs. And imagine if you had 3 baseballs in your stomach, that wouldn't necessarily be too comfortable, but imagine you only weighed 10 pounds. So, okay, enough. So plastic, what we do matters. A bottle cap in the gutter washes down the storm drain, ends up in the river, ends up in the ocean, ends up in some animal's belly, because plastic is an incredible substance that is very, very long-lived in the environment. Okay, now this is a project about what, if you just look closely, things you can't usually see. This project is kind of entitled Marine Microfauna, and I first started this project I was on a ship traveling to Kure Atoll, and at night one of the deckhands put a light over the side of the boat just to see what was there, just curiosity, and there was this swirling cloud of red creatures that came to the light. They're a couple millimeters across, maybe. The big ones are a half an inch, the really big ones. And what they are invertebrate and fish larvae that are in their sort of planktonic stage. And they're attracted to the light at night. And this one particular funnel-shaped cloud that I saw was red. And I asked what it was, and they said, oh, that's crab larvae. Because we were downstream from a coral reef. And there'd been this huge hatch then. So this was the first picture that I took on the NOAA ship, and I never made the connection until actually earlier today, that crab larva was the first thing I'd seen, and actually is the first thing that we grabbed out of the net during this plankton sample. So this is a crab larva. This is an invertebrate egg mass. This is an arrowworm. So this is little worm was in a couple drops of water, and they're so aggressive that he's pushing his way out of this little drop of water. He's in a little petri dish. If he leaves that water, he's like, he's in trouble. But they're so aggressive that, they don't really care about their boundaries. They just push. This is a little squid larva. A copepod. Now, what on earth are all those colors for? Who knows? The blue in little marine surface-dwelling creatures is well known to science to be a protection against ultraviolet. It keeps them from being damaged by UV rays. But these other colors, like this is what this is for. It's to hide from the sun in broad daylight. Like that, these, bright orange eyes, what's that for? This is little, French or American copepod. This is a little capryllid amphipod, maybe, the scientists say. These guys, they spend their entire life studying plankton. You show them something, they say, maybe we know what it is. We don't, they're just scratching the surface. It's so interesting to be with, the world's expert in, some group of creatures, and they say, it's a wide open field. We know, in certain groups, they know 5% of what the world has to offer as far as species diversity. In mammals and birds, we're pretty much there. But, they still find a new mammal every once in a while. But as far as fish larvae and, these small creatures, it's totally wide open. This is a porcelain crab larva. That whole thing he's just trying to make himself hard to eat. It's pretty effective, I think. Another invertebrate egg mass. Completely impossible to identify. This is a siphonophore. So they're related to jellyfish, but this guy actually has a kind of hard spine. It's not spine. It's kind of an exoskeleton. It's made out of the same stuff that your fingernails are made of. This is a mantis shrimp. Another mantis shrimp. My friend Susie thinks this looks like an Edward Gorey cartoon. This is a white-spotted toby. It starts out life being totally clear. Lots of these creatures, their principal form of camouflage is to be invisible. I mean, they literally are clear. But this fish, its color is starting to sort of bloom from the inside. This is a slender mola. This was shot 5 times life size. So from the top of the frame to the, this whole vertical measurement of this frame is 1/5 of an inch. So what is that? That's 8 feet, 96, it's 500 times life size on the screen. This little guy's common name is a sea elephant. But what's really cool is you get to actually see its entire, it's see-through. You get to see its entire digestive system, the whole track. It's all there. This is a pteropod. These guys are also sometimes called sea butterflies. They're actually snails. They have a hard calciferous shell made from calcium or aragonite. And they have a modified foot. They're snails, but their evolution has made it into this little set of wings that they use to propel themselves around. So they flap those little wings up top. This guy, little Dumbo the elephant, is the same. He has a round shell, but he's also a pteropod. This guy is called a Glaucus nudibranch. He is a sea slug that lives at the surface, floats. And his principal prey item are Portuguese man-of-war. So he sidles up next to them and just starts having lunch. So what he does is he takes the poison that Portuguese man-of-war used to sting us, and believe me, that hurts. I got one across the face one time, and I was literally, I had a wetsuit on, so there was no buoyancy problem, but, so it's like wearing a life jacket. For 20 minutes, I just had to turn over and lay on the surface of the water and just wait for it to stop. It was like, it's so excruciating. And it's just one little swipe across the face. So, I mean, if you got into a mess of those things, you'd be in serious trouble. And that's what these guys, that's the biological control for something that's very harmful to us. So I like these guys. This is a little annelid worm, which just means sectioned worm. But he's got those little bright red eyes. So this is a swordfish hatching. And this is a swordfish that's like a week old. So to catch this swordfish, they go out into these little slick areas and with a little hand net. And this fish is literally maybe 1.5 inches long, and we're in a 15-foot, 20-foot sort of Boston whaler kind of. It's a safe boat, so it doesn't kind of sink. It's a rigid hull, and it's a boat launched off a nose ship. It's a rescue boat in some uses, but they use it to go collect samples. So big boat, 2 huge engines, like monster machine, like really goes fast. And we're out there looking for these fish, and these guys are easy to find because they will come at you, even if you're 250,000 times bigger than they are. So literally, this little swordfish is facing off with us, and we're in this boat. He's protecting his territory. It's just actually really easy to catch. It was, I mean, I couldn't believe it. And the biologist said, that's what they all do. These are little fish eggs. This is a mahi-mahi larva, and he's got his mouth open. Well, that's what they do. These are the fastest growing fish that they know of. And that's all. They just go around like a vacuum cleaner their entire life, just eating everything. But their world, at this point in their life, is like the top half inch, this planktonic layer. But it's like they're little vacuum cleaners all day. This is a porpita, which is called a blue button jellyfish. It's hardly a jellyfish, but it's they live at the surface. There's a really they don't have an air bubble like Portuguese man o' war or other things that live at the surface. But the material this is made of and how it's constructed, water won't sit on it. So even if you like try to dunk them, or a wave comes or anything, water won't stick to that surface. So they automatically come immediately back to the top because water won't adhere to it. I think from a materials engineering point of view, this is a really cool creature. This is a flying fish. And this is a flounder. Now this guy was in a bucket, and I didn't even know that we had it. He'd been, taking stuff out of the net and everything. And I was pouring the bucket, just trying to not make a mess on the lab floor, trying to empty and all of a sudden the stream of water, I was pouring something from one thing to another. The little stream of water deforms, and there's this big plop. It's like, what was that? And this little fish was like hiding in plain sight. He was so transparent. And it's just this really contrasty light, and using some light from the extreme side that made the surface of him iridesce against a black background is the only way that we could figure out how to make him show.
How big was that thing?
This guy? He's in a 60 millimeter Petri dish. And you can't see the edges. So that means that he's, it's an inch long. Tiny little guy. This is an octopus. He's half an inch tall. And then this is in about, it's 15 to 20 drops of water, a single swipe of the hand net. So in certain places, at the confluence of currents and things like that, where things gather, which is exactly where that plastic that was in that albatross's stomach, that's where that material gathers. Plankton gathers there. There's all sorts of animals that come to that to feed. Bigger animals come to feed on the plankton. Those bigger animals are what the albatross come to find. So there's these places where these currents come together, where you have this density of life. In the mid-Pacific Gyre, which is this big sort of rotating thing where things gather in the center, just like if you stir a bucket up, the stuff floating on the surface sort of gathers in the center. If you take a sample of it and you weigh the plastic versus the organic natural material, by weight, there will be 7 times more plastic than there will be animals and plants. That's how much trash we're dumping into the ocean. So it's beautiful, but it needs to be taken care of.
Thank you. So I took a little longer than I was supposed to. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Let's take a couple of quick questions. That was so beautiful. Whose hand? Way back in the back.
Thank you very much for sharing. What kind of studio do you work in order to photograph those miniatures?
What kind of studio? Well, right now it weighs about 500 pounds, and we take it wherever we have to. Most of these pictures were done on a NOAA ship that was on a research cruise off the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. So I take it to wherever the creatures are, whether it be on a ship or a remote island or in the southeast corner of Central Park or wherever the creatures are.
Another question. Is there anyone who hasn't asked yet? Yeah, it's in the second row here.
Given that most people haven't ever seen these creatures and probably wouldn't get a chance to otherwise, what role do you think that your images play as an educational tool?
Well, wanting to share that fact that, really wanting to regard the individual, that's why the background's always stripped away. Because I think these creatures are so interesting and fascinating and entertaining. I mean, it's great fun to sort through a plankton net or to pick through a fistful of soil. It's actually heartwarming. I mean, it's a pretty restorative thing to actually see how alive the world is. Because I spent 20 years photographing things on the U.S. endangered species list. So, I mean, literally for years, I only photographed things that we had misbehaved so badly we were about to destroy forever. And that wasn't even particularly depressing because they were endangered. They weren't extinct. They were still alive. They were still amazing. And each one of those creatures had its own way of being in the world that was fascinating and worth attempting to share, which is, I think, that's what all of this is about. I mean, I think all of this is just an attempt to share something we find out about the world.
How can you do better than to end on that note? Thank you so much. It was lovely work. Thank you. We are so grateful to each of you, David and Tim and Erika and Justin. You've given us such gifts, and each such different gifts. I know all of you will agree with me when I say that going upstairs and seeing those photographs was such a remarkable experience, but you're taking us deeper into your work has given us so much more to understand and think about our fellow human beings and about the world around us, and about our cities and about ourselves. So we are extremely grateful. This is a remarkable evening, and I am honored to have been able to be part of it. And I'm so glad that we had such a fine audience. And all of us can know that nothing here would have happened without one person who is going to close the evening, and that's Karen Davies. Karen.
Thank you very much. The reason Larry called me a force of nature earlier, gives me an idea of Hurricane Karen blows through Annenberg. But the reason I do this is because I want all of you to see the photos. 25,000 people see images that they may not otherwise see by having the exhibit here. And I'm not going to go to the Tenderloin and hang out with Harold and Carol like Justin, and I'm not going to go hunting with people. And I never knew all those sea creatures existed. I'd probably go to Afghanistan, except for Lauren wouldn't let me. And so I'm very grateful that photographers go out and do these things so that we can see a world that would otherwise be unknown to us. And I think it's important that we see it so that we can be challenged to think more beyond our own homes and our own schools and our own lives. I would like to thank the people who have supported this event. As Justin mentioned, it's very difficult to get funding for this kind of thing anymore. Annenberg has been very committed to hosting this each year. Also, I want to thank our global sponsors, Canon and TNT. I would like to thank the Los Angeles Times for many, many years of support for this. And also this year we had help from Field and Stream Magazine and Aurora Photos. Now I would like you to join us upstairs in the lobby. We have World Press photo books that the photographers will sign if you're interested. And what would you like to say?
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.